And go.
Have you ever played God? Did you make a mistake while playing God and create a monster that goes on and kills your younger brother and then causes the inadvertent death of the servant in your household that is considered family by your cousin? Well, don't you worry. We have the solution for you. You see that lake over there, that ice-cold black lake? Just jump into it. You'll be fine. Give it a few minutes and everything, all your problems will be solved because suicide is the answer. Okay. And yes, that relates to how Victor contemplated suicide because of his mistakes.
I think I put a disclaimer on it.
By playing God, he ran away. Okay, I'm done. Let's actually do this.
Romantic writers believed in the spiritual healing power of nature. How is this present in the chapters we read today?
Okay. Well, after the deaths of...
Do you want me to go first?
Please.
Okay, I was gonna say there's definitely, at least me, with the whole nature thing, I got two vibes out of it. There's like the parts where nature's all good and it's sunny and happy and nice, and it's where all the characters go when they're not feeling good and they need to retreat somewhere. And then there's the times when it's like all stormy and bad weather and stuff, and it's like when things are going really bad, the nature is also really bad. Let's see. I mean, I have specifics for these things, but...
Yeah, I do too, don't worry. I'm looking for it real quick.
Yeah, give me a quick little second.
For example, on page 77, when Victor is heading home, there's this giant thunderstorm. And at first, when, like, the bad moment, I guess, is what we're going to call it, when he first sees a glimpse of the monster again, it starts with, like, when the storm appears. The storm appeared to approach rapidly, and upon landing, I ascended low hill, blah, blah, blah. It advanced, the heavens were clouded, and I soon felt the rain coming slowly in large drops, but its violence quickly increased. As its violence increased, that's when the moment became more... what's it called? Suspenseful, because as the peak of the storm happens, that's when Victor sees the monster. He's like, what? Nani? And it's after the monster's out of sight, that's when everything calms again. So that's how nature kind of is displayed in moments of suspense, and how nature relates to the feelings of a person in romantic writing, because romantic writers always related emotion to nature. And then there's also the little healing thing that we get right after the death of Justine, where Victor's father was like, nature will make us feel better because it makes us feel happy. And it's like, Victor on page.
I had a reference to page 76.
Go ahead, do it. Do it while I look.
Oh, I was gonna say, so you referenced 77 where the weather was really bad and stuff. When I was thinking of the weather, I was thinking of 76 where it was on his way back home, but before he got there, he passed through all of like the good nature and like when it was all sunny out and stuff. And I feel like, you know, we're supposed to be focusing on the spiritual healing power of nature. I felt like I understood that idea the most when everyone was leaving nature and like, you know, like the opposite was happening. Like they were leaving nature and like avoiding nature and all that good stuff. And so they were whatever the opposite of being spiritually healed is. Right? So it's like in that scene, he's leaving nature because he's going back to where back to his home. So by leaving nature, he's leaving the place of spiritual healing and all that good stuff.
And then after that, on page 97, he ends up returning to the place where he used to wander all the time as a boy, which I quote, my wanderings were directed toward the valley of sea.
Yeah,
Chamounix. Yeah, it's, I guess, French.
Chamonix?
Yeah,
it's definitely French. Yes. Anyway.
And it's like, I visited frequently during my boyhood. 6 years had passed since then. I was a wreck, but not had changed in those savage and enduring scenes. So it proves that nature is really everlasting, and nature doesn't really change if left untouched, which can create a good place for spiritual healing, because it's something familiar that Victor was able to go back to be able to reflect upon and feel good about, because that's something that hasn't been tainted by anything that he's done.
Well, I was gonna say from that quote, it said it's been 6 years since he's been back there, and since between his boyhood or whatever, and now he's been like, again, whatever the opposite of being spiritually good is. I don't know, corrupted maybe is the word I'm thinking of.
Sure, why not?
But it's like between when he was in nature and spending all that time in nature, and now when he's been away from nature and avoiding it for 6 years, his spirit has been a lot worse.
But it's like at the end of that quote, naught had changed in those savage and enduring scenes, so it's like he changed, but nature didn't.
Yeah. Which,
yeah, so it's like him being able to go back to that is what's going to heal him, in a sense, if we think of it in the romantic era way.
Yeah, like he wants to be healed, so he's going back to nature.
Mm-hmm.
That's what you meant, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
But yeah, it's like he goes back and it's like it's nice and all that stuff. So it's like on page 98. Let's see. At the end, it's like the same lulling sounds acted as a lullaby to my two keen sensations. When I placed my head upon my pillow, sleep crept over me. I felt it as it came and blessed the giver of oblivion. So it's like there's a sense of both foreboding with that, and at the same time, it's a sense of good. Like I get the foreboding from the word oblivion.
Yeah, the word oblivion there is definitely
But it's like nature is what allowed him to be calm and go to sleep again, like actually sleep and like actually have a good rest and not like be sad.
You know, I get what you're saying. I get it.
Thank you. That's chapter 5. I need chapter 6. No. But it's like, and like Shelley, like off the topic of nature real quick, Shelley just kept up with what's it called? Foreshadowing at the end of every goddamn chapter. Because it's like...
Yeah, I feel like that's gonna be a thing. Or like at the end of, like what's that, where volume 2 starts? The end of that chapter? I can find it. The first hapless victims to my unhallowed arts. Which implies to me that there's more victims, which there are, so.
Because it's like... At the end of chapter 6 on page 72, it's like my own spirits were high and I bounded along with feelings of unbridled joy and hilarity, which, well, that should sound happy, knowing the context of the book.
Like it's irony.
Yeah, it's like him being happy. It's like probably on a first read, someone would be like, oh, yay, some good things are going to finally happen. But like having knowledge on the book, you're sitting here and you're like, that's going to be his downfall, because while he's happy, his family is being sad because people died because of him. Anyway, okay, we were getting back. Okay, we need to get back on there. Read the second part of the question.
They also, romantic writers also believe that people were essentially good and that evil was created by society.
Woo.
So, do you want me to start with that?
Yes, please.
Okay. So there are a lot of places where I feel like this whole theme is. But I was thinking thoughts. And, well, one thing with the monster, could you argue that he was made bad and evil and stuff by the way that humanity treated him?
I would say yes, especially in the way that he started talking to Victor during chapter 10, aka volume 2, chapter 2. When he was saying, everywhere I see bliss from which I alone am irrevocably excluded, I was benevolent and good, misery made me a fiend. So it's like, that talks about the whole, well, it doesn't talk about, but it shows the whole, people are inherently good, which Frankenstein's monster saying, I was inherently good, but humanity and your actions turned me evil. So it's like, if we want to take the word of the monster as fact, then that's definite proof of it.
Yeah, wait, you said 103, right? Because I was looking at the end of 103 with, you accuse me of murder, and yet you would, with a satisfied conscience, destroy your own creature. Oh, praise the eternal justice of man. Like, I feel like that's saying to me that because man had treated him, from his opinion, unjustly, he became this bad thing that, like, murdered and all of that good stuff.
And
but
then it's no, go ahead.
Honestly, that's like when he first existed, he was inherently good, but then because of how Frankenstein treated him with, like, bailing on him for at least 2 years, and now he's seeing him again, just because of how he was treated by everybody, he became this corrupted bad thing. This evil created by society.
Frankenstein got daddy issues, what? Relatable. Anyway, but and then there's like the whole inherently good turned evil thing, like in the vein of loss of innocence. Because it's like we see various accounts of loss of innocence within these chapters. Like we have the death of William, who was like described to be a very bright and cheerful boy who like would never do something wrong, but he's found strangled to death. So it's like a loss of innocence as in the loss of a life. And then there's Justine's unjust execution, where basically because no matter what she pleaded, guilty or not guilty, she was going to be found guilty anyway. So she decided at the end just to plead guilty to get it over with. So it's like that is a loss of innocence in a sense of I might as well just give up because there's nothing that's going to change whatever I do. And then there's Elizabeth on page.
I was gonna say, I feel like the loss of innocence with Justine was more so because she realized that all the people like who were passing judgment on her in the system, that I guess she was innocent. She was innocent, so she assumed that like the justice system was fair. And in that trial, she realized that people's judgments and the system and society weren't actually fair and just and right. I feel like that was more so the loss of innocence that happened with Justine. So then at the end, she realized that she was going to hang anyway.
And then there's on page 95 with Elizabeth when she says, when I reflect, my dear cousin, on the miserable death of Justine Moritz, whoops, I no longer see the world and its works as they before appeared to me. Before I looked upon the accounts of vice and injustice that I read in books or heard of from others as tales of ancient days or imaginary evils, at least they were remote and more familiar to reason than to the imagination, blah, blah, blah. But now misery has come home and men appear to me as monsters thirsting for each other's blood.
Yeah.
So it's like, in a sense, I'm gonna relate this to Tale of Two Cities. I can't help it. But it's kind of like how with Lucy, at first she was like very like innocent to the world, and it's like, but once she got to France, when her husband got sent to jail, she like kind of finally realized how there's wrongs in the world, and she was just like realizing it but trying to work through it. And then there's Elizabeth, who like she was also very like believing in the justice system, like, oh, if Justine's not guilty, then she's not guilty, they're gonna see it. But there's the whole people passing judgment, and people are not inherently good. Well, I mean, they're inherently good but turned evil due to society. And
it's like a cycle.
Yeah, it's a vicious cycle. And then basically and then it's like Elizabeth saying that men are just out for each other's blood is her loss of innocence, because she realizes that people are like it's kind of in the same vein as Justine, where it's like people are going to judge, and even if you believe in a thing and if you know you're right in said thing, if the majority want to go out for somebody else's blood, it's gonna happen.
This reminds me of like stuff with the Crucible, how it was like like, you know how like if you were charged with being a witch, you had to go up to trial, but it didn't really matter whether you were like a witch or not, because assumably none of those people were actually witches. But the court was gonna find you guilty anyway, so you either could try and say that you were innocent and go out dying, claiming to be innocent, or you could just say that you're guilty and just go out with that. I had a point somewhere. Oh, and there was that whole same religious conflict with if you confess to being guilty, then you could try to like atone for your sin before you died, versus if you like lied and said you were innocent, then you had no way of doing that. And it's like this weird like twisted logic that somehow you'll gain innocence by claiming to be guilty even though you're not actually guilty.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, that whole dynamic, that like weird. It's probably just weird now because the time of these books is all different from us now.
Yeah.
But it's like that. I had a point somewhere. I lost it.
I mean, I know, I kind of get what you're saying. It's like either die with dignity, knowing that you yourself are speaking.
Oh wait, hold on. I remember now. I was
Okay.
gonna say that some people believed in the system before, and they thought the system was all good and pure and stuff, but they lost their innocence because they realized that it wasn't. That's how I was relating it to the question. And I cut you off. What were you saying?
No, I was saying because it's like, in the sense of losing innocence and like the sense of we're inherently good, but society turns us corrupt, you can either die with honor and dignity, knowing that you are correct in what you are saying. I am innocent and I'm going to die an innocent person. Or you could throw away your dignity and say, I'm guilty, just to prove to others that you're willing to atone for the sin that you committed. And it's just, it makes me sad that we, like us as humans, went through a time period like that. And then we still do have some people who are on like the very extreme side of religion who still believe in that sort of way, which is kind of sad in my perspective. See you taking off that hoodie, you too hot?
Yes, I am.
Are you burning like them books, Lauren?
The books, yes.
All right. Anyway, I never set a timer. Oops.
I mean, I could check if we need to know. I can just check the video.
Yeah, it's fine.
But
no, I realized that, and like how long have we been going? So I can just kind of. But I'll keep talking while you're doing that.
Sure.
So I'm gonna go into my chapter 10 question, which hey, we're gonna have our existential crisis today. Want to have fun? All right. So in chapter 10, like with the brief moments that, well, not
17
like
minutes.
Okay, 17. So 30 minus. Yeah,
13.
13. Thanks. So. Okay, so in chapter 10, Shelley is able to, like, in the very few pages that we do hear the monster talking with Victor, Shelley is able to generate sympathy for the monster. We find out that he used to be a benevolent creature early on, but because of society, he turned bad, and because of Victor, he turned bad. So, what makes a reader feel sympathetic to what we are told is the antagonist? And existential crisis. Is the monster really the antagonist, or could Victor be considered the antagonist of the novel?
Oh man, I have so many feelings about this question. It's also why I enjoy this book as much as I do. Because it's like the book's called Frankenstein. You just go off of this assumption that, you know, it's his perspective. Like, you just assume that Frankenstein's like, I mean, obviously he's the protagonist, but, you know, like the good guy and like the one you should be like rooting for the whole time. But then you meet this monster who he created and then was just like, whoops, I'm scared of you, bye, and just bailed on him. In case you can't tell which side I'm leaning towards here. But I think that Shelley Gardner's empathy for the monster, you know his crimes, you're fully aware of them, but you also see the way that Victor treated him. And if you consider the way that Victor treated him, like as if Victor had a son and had treated his son that way, then you would have some kind of empathy, or at least sympathy for that person.
Mm-hmm.
Was there another part of that question? I forget the other half of what you asked.
could Victor be considered the antagonist truly?
Do you mean the antagonist, like, you mean like the bad guy definition of the antagonist?
Yeah, like could
Oh,
Victor,
okay.
even though we see the novel in his point of view, could he actually be the bad guy?
I mean, I feel that I mean, I think there's arguments for both, but if you're asking why he could be a bad guy, then I think it's that he made this, he wanted to make life, and it's like, okay, sure, pal, whatever. But he constantly makes the active decision to not rein in his creation and to face what he's made. Like with Justine, he could have went to the courts and been like, "Look, I made this." Like, even though he was like, "Oh, they're not gonna believe me," he could have went to them and been like, "I made this thing. This thing very much did it." He could have tried. He could have done something, especially because remember this, the 1800s, and what women said mattered less than what men said. Not saying they would have not thought it was insane a little bit, but he could have done something. But the whole time that she kept being found like guilty, he was just like, no, I'm not gonna do it. I gotta keep my pride and not look crazy to the people. Versus he's got looking sane versus a woman's life. He could have done something, but he chose not to. And every time he has the opportunity to like face what his actions have caused, i.e., all of these murders and stuff. Every time he has the opportunity to like face that and deal with it, he doesn't. He chooses just not to, and just to avoid his problems that are very negatively affecting other people.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so my quick opinion on it, since I brought it up, it's like part of what makes me wow. Yes, I'm a real person, Bartolo, I swear. Anyway, what makes me feel the sympathy for the monster is when he says, "How can I move thee? Will no entreaties cause thee to turn a favorable eye upon thy creature, who implores thy goodness and compassion? Believe me, Frankenstein, I was benevolent. My soul glowed with love and humanity. But am I not alone, miserably alone? You, my creator, abhor me. What hope can I gather from your fellow creatures who owe me nothing? They spurn and hate me." And it's like, it makes you think. It's like Frankenstein created a human being, granted an abomination, but a human being with his own thoughts and feelings. So it's like, if you have some sort of heart, you instantly feel bad because everyone's been at that low point where you've been like the target of hate of some kind. So it's like, but for the monster, it's on a larger scale. He's been rejected by the thing that he probably considers his father, because he does call Victor his creator.
Yeah, I was gonna say the monster didn't ask to be born, especially not with like, we're assuming he's like really ugly. Not with how he looks. He didn't ask for that life. That was thrown on him forcibly, and the person who's responsible didn't take responsibility for it. And the monster was just left to deal with it.
And it's like, that's what makes me think Victor could be considered the antagonist of the novel, as opposed to being the protagonist, even though we see everything in his eyes, because he created a problem and he ran away from it. He's not dealing with it. It's like he lets the deaths of multiple people happen, but doesn't really do anything about it. He knows who murdered William, yet he won't come out and say it, which definitely makes me angry, like considerably angry, because he probably could have fixed the problem or made people look into it at the cost of his pride.
Like, just some effort.
If he tried, I would have been like, okay. Or if he tried to reconcile with the monster, as the monster's asking him, basically, like, just listen to me, talk with me, be the figure in my life that I need, kind of thing. Yet Victor constantly going, no, you need to die. It's just making me increasingly angry at him.
I would say it's actually kind of like one of my questions. That was, do you think things would have turned out better if Victor had treated the monster like better from the start?
Oh yeah,
which is basically, we're definitely both saying yes to that question.
Yeah, I definitely think so, because if Victor didn't freak out, like he should have known that it was going to be an abomination from the start, because, you know, he mixed matched parts. But if he stayed there, owned up to what he created, and showed the monster compassion from the start, and if the monster had like one little source of compassion and kindness to always go back to, kind of like a child being able to go back to their parents after having like a horrible day at school and still having that support system with them. It's like, if the monster had that support system, then he may not have turned into the vile beast that he is and murdered a child out of revenge.
I feel like it goes with that whole evil is created by society thing. I didn't really mean to go back to that point, but
it's fine.
I feel like it does, in that he became evil because of how he was. Should we go on to something else? I feel like.
Yeah. Here, you bring something up.
Oh boy, okay. So, the whole, like, Victor playing God thing, we get that, like, Victor as, like, a, like, being like God, right? That's, do you see that, or do we have to, like, talk about that? I'm leading into the question.
With my very, very little biblical knowledge.
Okay, well, is God the problem? Because but, like, you see that, right? How, like, Victor could be, like, God, and then he's creating life and all that good stuff.
Yeah, I know that. I can do that.
So, so I feel like that's pretty, that's that. But I was thinking about what that made the monster exactly. Like, if we continue this, like, symbolic thing, and then on page 102, this isn't even a specific quote, but Victor calls him the devil, and also the book refers to him a couple times as a demon. And
he even says vile insect.
What are you talking about?
He calls him a vile insect,
among other things, but he calls him a lot of things here. But the part where he called him devil kind of stuck out to me, and it made me consider two things that the monster could possibly represent. And stick with me here, Amanda.
Okay.
I got two theories. One, this is not related to the devil part. He could be like Adam, the first human that God made. And theoretically, Adam was supposed to be like this perfect thing. Like he was supposed to be like a good human, and then he got like tainted, basically. Like he turned away from God and he became bad. So I see that because it's like God created Adam and like Victor created the monster, and like he created life and stuff. And that's kind of, I don't know, I feel like in the background I was kind of interpreting it that way because that was the most direct like interpretation. It's like the very beginning of the Bible is like God created Adam, right? Yeah. But then reading the devil part, it made me think about what if the monster is supposed to be like the devil? Which I'm going to give you a little bit of background because I feel like you need the background for this.
Yes, I do.
So Lucifer was originally an angel, like a regular angel.
Yeah,
and
I
then,
know that part.
Oh, yeah, and then he rebelled against God, and then God made him, and then God sent him to hell, basically. So just because, so basically, the devil started out good, and then things happened, and then God
society made him evil.
So yeah, the whole devil thing made me think about that. And it's not a perfect matchup. Like, Lucifer got that fate because he did something. Like, he rebelled against God, but then God also, like, he punished him for it. He treated him really negatively for something that he did, which made him become this really bad thing. So I was wondering how you felt about that. Did I explain that well enough?
Yeah, you explained it well enough. Come on, I'm having an existential crisis. Anyway.
Okay, cool.
Because, like, words. Because I was, relating it to the sense of, like, I know the fact that Victor is playing God. Originally, though, I did not relate Frankenstein to being, like, Lucifer. But I definitely see where you're coming from, because it's like, Lucifer being the fallen angel, Lucifer used to be good, but because of circumstances, he turned evil in God's eyes and was sent to hell. So, yeah, in the same vein, because the monster was an abomination in the eyes of God, so God ran away from his creation, or sent his creation away in a sense, but even though Victor totally ran. So then Frankenstein's monster's personal hell became society's way of treating him, which then turned him evil, which then turned him into the devil-like and demon-like figure that he is today. Does that make sense?
Yes, that's what that's what I was thinking.
Yeah, I did it!
Okay, I wasn't sure if that made sense or not, but I just kept, like, there. It made me think about it. I think there's even a part when they mention Adam. Hold on.
Yeah, I do remember seeing that.
Wait, hold on.
I don't remember what page.
103. Remember that I am thy creature. I ought to be thy Adam, but rather I am the fallen angel. Oh. I thought it was cool when I came up with this.
Thing is, Lauren, if you didn't point it out, I wouldn't have really noticed it.
I'm gonna just read I'm just gonna read this aloud again for my own purposes. I ought to be thy Adam, but rather the fallen angel, whom thou drivest from joy for no misdeed. Everywhere I see bliss, from which I alone am irrevocably excluded. I was benevolent and good. Misery made me a fiend. Yeah.
And in the end, Frankenstein's monster says, "Let me tell you my tale," and then we get a tale within a tale within a tale. The end!
Why, are we out of time?
Yeah.
Oh. Really?
Yeah, I mean, we want to go on for a few more minutes? Like, we could
probably... No, I feel like we were done with that, but I thought we had time for one more question.
Well, do you have, like, a short one we could do real quick?
Oh, sure. Real quick, just your opinion. Do you think so you know William, Victor's brother, died, got murdered, right? Do you think Victor, like, cared super deeply about William getting murdered, or was he guilty? Because he was somehow related. Like, he felt really bad about it. I was just curious how you felt about that.
When I was reading, I felt like Victor, Victor was sad because it was his little brother, but at the same time, he hasn't been with his brother for over 6 years. And so I felt whenever Victor cried, it was more out of guilt because it was his creation that caused that death.
Yeah, I felt like weird vibes from that. Because it's like, if I assumed he was going to feel sad because his brother died, but it's like, all the times when he was sad, it felt more like guilt to me.
Like, the literal mood and tone of every chapter thus far has literally just been guilt. So,
which two things. A, it's weird to me that he's guilty, even though at the same time he won't own up to what he's done, like, in any way that matters. Like, if he feels guilty, but he's not actually, like, owning up to it and, like, you know, taking, like, dealing with what he's done and actually, like, doing anything about it. Also, what was I gonna say? Oh, I feel like the fact that he's guilty and not mourning shows that he's kind of self-centered, and, you know, he just deals with himself and his own problems and doesn't think about how he affects others, i.e. the monster.
Which takes away sympathy points from Victor, which I'm just gonna bring this up real quick. Shelley continued the trend of taking a chapter to describe how good and well and nice characters are, so Justy and William, and then she immediately kills them off and then shows Victor's reaction to it, and he still doesn't own up to what has happened. So I had asked, what effect does this have on the reader, and does this make you feel more sympathetic towards Victor? And I believe it just takes away sympathy from Victor because of him just feeling guilt but doing nothing about it.
Yeah, I think it does, because it's like, I feel like you'd have sympathy for someone who feels like what you'd expect them to feel after something happens, but he doesn't have the normal reaction that somebody would have. So I feel like you have less sympathy for him because he's not responding in, like, a selfless way. Okay,
I think that's a good note to end on. Bye, Bart Yellow!